हेलो एवरीवन, ये मेरे MCQ सीरीज़ की 4th वीडियो सीरीज़ है एंड यूनिट 1, 2, 3 एंड 4 मेरे चैनल पे अपलोडेड है। आप वो एग्ज़ाम से पहले देख सकते हो और ये वीडियो UGCNET Mppsc एग्ज़ाम्स सबके लिए इम्पॉर्टेंट है। सो आप एग्ज़ाम से पहले इसको रिवाइज़ करके जाना एंड प्लीज़ लाइक और सब्सक्राइब कर देना मेरे चैनल को, क्योंकि आने वाले 4 दिन में हम सारे यूनिट का MCQs कवर कर देंगे एग्ज़ाम से पहले। सो अब हम शुरू करते हैं अपने पहले क्वेश्चन से। इन W.B. Yeats' apocalyptic poem, The Second Coming, what phrase describes the terrifying creature slouching toward Bethlehem? And the answer is a rough beast. The poem famously concludes with, and what rough beast its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. And this poem, written in 1919 in the aftermath of World War I, Yeats reflects gyre theory, anticipating the collapse of Christian civilization and the birth of a chaotic new historical era. एंड आप जब ये वीडियो देखोगे तो वीडियो को पॉज करके पहले खुद से आंसर देने की कोशिश करना। सेकेंड क्वेश्चन, विच सेक्शन ऑफ T.S. Eliot, The Wasteland 1922, opens with the famous line, April is the cruelest month? And the answer is The Burial of the Dead. The Burial of the Dead sets the bleak, sterile landscape of post-World War I European culture. And please ये पांचों सेक्शन आप याद रखना, इन पांचों सेक्शन की नेम। Eliot subverts Chaucer by depicting spring as painful because it awakens dead memories and unfulfilled hopes, blending mythological allusions, Fisher King, Tiresias, with modernist fragmentation. And also remember these references. Question number 3. In James Science tragic comedy Riders to the Sea, how many sons has Moria lost to the sea before the play begins? And the answer is 5. Moria has already lost her husband, father-in-law, and 5 sons to the Atlantic Ocean before Bartley, her last surviving son, dies. And this novel, set on the Aran Islands, since portrays the stark elemental struggle between humble fisherman and the ruthless sea, culminating in Moria's profound acceptance of human mortality. Question number 4. What iconic action does Nora Helmer take at the end of Henrik Ibsen's A Doll's House, 1879? And the answer is she leaves her husband and children to find her own identity. Nora slams the front door behind her, initiating a feminist revolution in modern drama. Henrik Ibsen's prose masterpiece dismantles the Victorian domestic idol of the angel in the house, showing Nora's realizing she has been treated like a doll by both her father and husband. Next question, about Sylvia Plath. In Sylvia Plath's confessional poem Daddy, what historical metaphor does she use to describe her oppressive father figure? And the answer is a Nazi concentration camp officer, German fascist. Plath uses brutal Holocaust imagery, Panvis, Luftwaffe, Dacu, Aryan, to express deep psychological trauma, and Daddy exorcises the ghost of Plath's domineering German-born father and her husband Ted Hughes, concluding with the empowering declaration, Daddy, you bastard, I am through. Question number 6. Philip Larkin's poem The Whitsun Wedding records a train journey across England observing what social ritual? And the answer is working class couples getting married on Whitsun Wedding. Working class couples getting married on Whitsun weekend. Larkin observes newlywed couples boarding the train at various stations, capturing post-war British social life. And it is written in accessible anti-modernist realism. The poem concludes with a shower of confetti symbolizing an anonymous, expensive surge of new generational life. Next question. In Daniel Thomas Fernhill, what does the pastoral landscape symbolize for the speaker? And the answer is Edenic childhood, innocence, joy, and eventual loss of time. This poem celebrates youthful freedom on an aunt's farm before waking to the realization of mortality. And Thomas uses lush musical diction and biblical echoes, famously concluding, "Time held me green and dying, though I sang in my chains like the sea." Next question. A.G. Gardner's essays on the rule of the road argues that personal liberty must be balanced with, and the answer is social cooperation and consideration for others. Gardner uses the metaphor of walking down a street to illustrate that liberty is not a personal license but a social contract. It is this writing under the pseudonym Alpha Up the Plough. Remember this? Gardner elevates everyday incidents into charming moral essays on civic courtesy and mutual accommodation. Next question. What incident at the Malabar Caves caused the central crisis in A.M. Foster's A Passage to India? And the answer is Adela Quested accuses Dr. Aziz of attempted assault. Adela's panic inside the echoing cave sparks racial hysteria, colonial trials, and strained Anglo-Indian relations. Foster uses the mysterious echo of the Malabar Caves to symbolize existential emptiness and the psychological impossibility of genuine friendship under British imperialism. Next question. In D.H. Lawrence's autobiographical novel, Sons and Lovers, published in 1913, what is the name of the protagonist caught in an audible trap? And we all know this novel also banned. And the answer is Paul Morrell. Paul Morrell struggles between passionate emotional attachment to his mother Gertrude Morrell and his romantic relationships with Miriam Levers and Clara Dewis. Lawrence explores working-class mining life in Nottinghamshire, examining destructive maternal bonding, industrial alienation, and raw psychological awakening. Question number 11. James Joyce's A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, published in 1916, chronicles the intellectual and artistic awakening of whom? And the answer is Stephen Dedalus. Stephen Dedalus rejects Irish nationalism, religious dogma, and family ties to embrace artistic exile. Welcome, O life. I go to encounter for the millionth time the reality of experience. The novel employs shifting narrative styles matching Stephen's development stages from infancy to the university student, introducing epiphany and aesthetic theory. Next question. Virginia Woolf's novel Mrs. Dalloway, 1925, publishing year, takes place over the course of what time frame? The answer is a single day in post-World War I London. Clarissa Dalloway prepares to host a party while shell-shocked veteran Septimus Smith descends into suicide. Virginia Woolf pioneers streams of consciousness writing, capturing the inner psychological time, striking Big Ben chimes, and London's urban vitality. Next question. According to Bharatmuni Natya Shastra, what is the core aesthetic experience relished by spectators of drama? And the answer is rasa, aesthetic flavor or relish. Rasa is the transcendent aesthetic delight produced in the spectator through the combination of determinants, vibhav, consequence, anubhav, and transitory states, vyabhichari bhav. Remember these three states. The Natya Shastra identifies 8, later 9 primary rasas such as Shringar, Veer, Raudra, Karun, etc., rooted in permanent mental states, sthai bhavas. Next question. In Sanskrit literary criticism, Anandavardhan's Dhvanyaloka stabilizes what principle as the soul of poetry? And the answer is Dhvani, suggested meaning. Anandavardhana argued that poetry, where the suggested meaning dhvani outshines literal denotation, is the highest form of poetic art. Dhvani theory revolutionized Indian poetics by demonstrating how unspoken emotional resonance and subtle suggestion create profound literary impact. Next question. In Aristotle's Poetics, what term describes the purgation or cleansing of pity and fear in tragedy? And we all know the answer, catharsis. Catharsis is the emotional cleansing of psychological elevation experienced by the audience upon witnessing a tragic hero's downfall. Aristotle defines tragedy through 6 parts, prioritizing plot, mythos over character and highlighting hamartia, tragic error, and peripeteia, reversal of fortune. Next question. Longinus's classical treatise on the sublime identifies how many principal sources of the sublime? And the answer is 5. And the 5 sources are grandeur of thought, capacity for strong emotion, noble diction, dignified word composition, and majestic figures of speech. Remember those 5 sources. Longinus defines the sublime, Mppsc+, as a certain loftiness and excellence in discourse that transports audiences and leaves a lasting impression of greatness. Question number 17. How did William Wordsworth famously define poetry in his preface to Lyrical Ballads, 1800? And the answer is his famous quotation, "The spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, it takes its origin from emotion recollected in tranquility." Wordsworth rejected neoclassical artificiality in favor of the real language of man and rustic life. And the preface is the manifesto of English Romanticism, arguing that poetry should communicate deep human emotions and truths derived from nature. Next question. In the study of poetry, what critical technique did Matthew Arnold propose to evaluate great poetry? And we all know the answer is the touchstone method. Arnold suggested using brief masterly lines from classical poets Homer, Dante, Shakespeare, Milton as touchstones to test the real power and poetic truth of other works. Arnold advocated for high seriousness in criticism, warning against historical and personal estimates that distort true literary value. Question number 19. In Tradition and Individual Talent by T.S. Eliot, published in 1919, compares the mind of the mature poet to what catalyst? And the answer is a shade of platinum. Eliot uses the catalyst metaphor. Platinum acts upon oxygen and sulfur dioxide to form sulfuric acid without itself undergoing change or being affected. Eliot campaigns impersonality in poetry, arguing that progress in art is not an individual turning away from tradition but a continual self-sacrifice of personality. Next question. I.A. Richards pioneered practical criticism by distributing poems to students with what crucial elements removed? If I am not wrong, it is published in 1929. And the answer is the author's name, date, and historical context. Richards removed authorial names to force students to analyze poems purely on the textual words on the page, laying the groundwork for new criticism. In Principles of Literary Criticism and Practical Criticism, 1929, I'm right, Richards analyzed students' misreadings, stock responses, and distinguished between emotive and referential language. Next question. In Ferdinand de Saussure's Structural Linguistics, a linguistic sign is composed of what two inseparable components? And the answer is signifier, sound image, and signified, its concept. Saussure posited that the bond between signified and signified is entirely arbitrary and relational. Saussure also distinguished between Lang, the abstract system of language, and Parole, individual speech acts, laying the foundation for structuralism and semiotics. Next question. What coinage did Jacques Derrida introduce to describe how meaning is constantly deferred and deferred in language? And the answer is difference. Derrida's neologism difference combines to differ and to defer, arguing that absolute fixed meaning is impossible in language. In his Landmark 1966 lecture, Structure, Sign and Play in the Discourse of the Human Science, Derrida challenged Western metaphysics and sentence structures. Question number 23. In a literature of their own under essay towards the feminist poetics, Helen Showalter coined what term for the study of women as writers? And it's the famous terms of Helen Showalter, and the answer is gynocriticism. Gynocriticism focuses on women as writer, examining female creativity, history, genres, and a distinct female literary tradition. Showalter identified three historical phases of women's writing: feminine phase, feminist phase, and female phase, contrasting it with feminist critique of male text. Question number 24. Edward Said's groundbreaking 1978 work, Orientalism, examines how Western scholarship constructed images of. The answer is the Orient, Western societies, as exotic, backward, and inferior. Remember the publishing date. Sid argued that Orientalism is a Western discursive style designed for dominating, restructuring, and exercising authority over the East. Drawing on Michael Foucault's concept of power knowledge, Said inaugurated post-colonial studies by revealing how imperial power infiltrates literature and culture. Question number 25. Gender trouble and in general trouble and imitation and gender in subordination, Judith Butler famously argues that gender is. And the answer is a socially constructed performance repeated over time. Butler posits that gender has no ontological core, it is performative, constituted through stylized acts and societal norms. Butler's queer theory reconstructs the binary opposition between sex and gender, showing how regulatory power structures construct bodies and identities. Question number 26. In Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic model, as explored in the interpretation of dreams, what part of the human psyche represents primal drives and desire? And the answer is id. The id operates on the pleasure principle, housing instinctive biological drives, whereas the ego meditates reality and the superego embodies moral conscience. Freudian psychoanalysis profoundly influenced 20th century literary criticism, enabling analysis of dream work, repression, neurosis, and artistic creation. Remember about id, ego, and superego by Sigmund Freud. Question number 27. In W.B. Yeats' poem, A Prayer for My Daughter, what quality does the poet primarily wish for his newborn daughter above all physical beauty? And the answer is spiritual innocence and rooted inner courtesy. W.B. Yeats prays that his daughter may become like a spreading laurel tree, possessing traditional grace and freedom from intellectual hatred. And written during the Irish War of Independence, and the poem contrasts external political chaos with the preservation of aristocratic family values and spiritual order. Question number 28. What illegal act did Nora commit to save her husband Torvald's life prior to the events of a doll's house? And the answer is she forged her dying father's signature on a loan documents. Nora forged her father's name to secure money for a trip to Italy to cure Torvald's failing health, which Constance later uses for blackmail. The forgery crime triggers the play's moral crisis, exposing Torvald's selfish hypocrisy when the secret is revealed. मैंने जब ये नॉवेल पढ़ा था ना, मुझे बहुत गुस्सा आया था टॉरवोल्ड पे. Question number 29. In Sylvia Plath's poem Lady Lazarus, how many times does the speaker claims to have attempted suicide? And the answer is 3 times every decade. Plath famously writes, dying is an art like everything else. I do it exceptionally well. Comparing her resurrections to a carnival slideshow act, Plath fiercely mocks male voyeurism and societal fascination with female suffering and death. बहुत बुरा लगता है मेरे को सिल्विया प्लाथ के बारे में सोच के. किसी का लाइफ इतना बुरा कैसे हो सकता है। क्वेश्चन नंबर 30. In Aldous Huxley's philosophical essay collection, The Divine Within, specifically chapter 1 and 2, what does Huxley argue is humanity's primarily spiritual malady? And the answer is identification with the ego, separating human consciousness from divine immanence. Huxley explores mysticism, perennial philosophy, and the realization of the divine ground within human consciousness. Huxley bridges Western scientific intellect with Eastern spiritual insight, advocating for contemplative self-transcendence over narrow egoistic desires. Question number 31. Mrs. Dalloway, what is the name of the shell-shocked veteran who commits suicide by jumping out a window? And the answer is Septimus Warren Smith. Septimus represents the invisible psychological casualties of World War I, serving as a dark double to Clarissa Dalloway. Through Clarissa and Septimus never meet physically, Clarissa feels profound spiritual communion when she hears of his death at her party. Question number 32. In Aristotle's Poetics, what does the term hamartia signify regarding a tragic hero? And the answer is tragic error in judgment, oversight, or flow. Hamartia denotes an error or miscalculation committed by a noble character leading to their reversal or fortune. Aristotle stressed that a tragic hero should neither be a villain nor an absolute saint, but a person of high standing whose downfall evokes pity and fear due to human frailty. Question number 33. What critical concepts did T.S. Eliot introduce in his essay on Hamlet to describe artistic expression of emotion through objects and situation? And the answer is objective correlative. Eliot defined it as a set of objects, a situation, or a chain of events serving as a formula for a particular emotion, evoking that emotion directly in the reader. Eliot famously criticized Shakespeare's Hamlet as an artistic failure because Hamlet's emotion exceeded the objective facts and situation provided in the play. Hope आप लोगों ने Hamlet movie देखी होगी. कैसे slow सब कुछ इस movie में हो रहा है. Question number 34. In Saussurian structuralism, what does the term lang refers to? And the answer is the abstract systematic rules of a language shared by a community. Lang is the underlying grammar and structures, whereas parole is actual individual utterance of speech. Saussure shifted linguistic study for diachronic historical evolution to synchronic structural systems at a given time, inspiring modern structuralist literary criticism. Question number 35. What critical strategy does deconstruction employ when analyzing literary and philosophical text? And the answer is exposing internal contradictions, binary reversals, and aporias in text. Deconstruction shows that any text undermines its own apparent coherence through unstable figurative language. Jacques Derrida argued against logocentrism, the belief in an ultimate source of truth or presence, demonstrating that meaning is endlessly deferred. Question number 36. According to Ellen Showalter's historical model of women's literary tradition, what is the middle phase characterized by protest and advocacy? And the answer is the feminist phase. Showalter's three phases are feminine, 1840 to 1880, imitation, feminist 1880 to 1920, protest against male standards, and female 1920 to present day, self-discovery. The tripartite model helped map out women's writing history, emphasizing autonomy and liberation from patriarchal literary constraints. Question number 37. What critical method did Edward Said propose in Cultural Imperialism to read colonial texts with an awareness of suppressed imperial histories? And the answer is contrapuntal reading. Contrapuntal reading involves reading canonical texts like Jane Austen's Mansfield Park, with an understanding of both metropolitan experiences and imperial exploitation abroad. And it borrowed from musical counterpoint. This method uncovers the global imperial connections embedded within seemingly domestic English novels. Question number 38. In Freudian psychoanalytic theory, what does the Oedipus complex describe during early psychosexual development? And the answer is a male child's unconscious sexual desire for his mother and jealousy fear of his father. Resolution of the Oedipus complex involves identifying with the father and internalizing moral laws forming the superego. This psychoanalytic concept has been extensively appeared in literary criticism such as analyzing Hamlet or D.H. Lawrence's novel Sons and Lovers. In Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra, what is the precise relationship between bhava and rasa? And the answer is bhavas are the emotional states acted out, whereas rasa is the aesthetic relish experienced by the spectator. Bharat Muni states in his famous aphorism, as from various kinds of seeds sprout trees and plants, so from bhavas arises rasas. Bhavas, permanent, transitory, and physical states acts as causes and manifestations that culminate in the sublime audience.